So I am just humbled and super honored to introduce the next two individuals, one of which I've known for a long time and the other of which I'm just forming a relationship with. And come on up, guys. So the first, Srinivas Narayanan, is the VP of Engineering at OpenAI and is, I believe, a direct report to Sam Altman and responsible for product development, specifically around the developer API and ChatGPT, and where he's been there for the past few years. And prior to that, he was at Meta and led their AI initiatives as a VP of engineering. So I think individually probably has more experience in this category, perhaps than most people on the planet. And so thank you for joining us. And Martin Casado is a general partner at Andreessen Horowitz. He's been there since 2016, the same year we open sourced ClickHouse, or the same year Alexei open sourced ClickHouse, coincidentally. Over the last decade, kind of widely recognized as one of the top infrastructure investors in the world. I can't say the top because he didn't invest in ClickHouse. I wanted him to, but he was conflicted. And I'll tell an anecdotal story because I'm going to try to liven up this session here at the end of the day. But Martin and I have known each other for over a decade. Our daughters went to preschool together. And in fact, when I was starting the company, I called Martin and said, I'd love to get your opinion on this technology, ClickHouse. He goes, I know it really well, come on over. So he invites me over to his house, and we go and sit in his backyard. And it was the evening, and he said, would you like to try some whiskey? I said, sure. He goes, I just bought a cask. Or a barrel.
It was a full barrel.
A full barrel.
Yeah.
And I said, I didn't know you could buy a barrel of whiskey, like in California. And what was your response?
You can, it's illegal. Yeah.
It's illegal. So I said, well, if it's illegal to buy a barrel of whiskey, how did you accomplish this?
Yeah, so it turns out, I'll do the short version of this. It turns out it's illegal because there's these old laws from Prohibition. You have to have a reseller and a retailer, and then you have to kind of do these things. So I spent a year and a half creating two legal entities so I could buy my damn barrel of whiskey. and we did it legally. So literally, like, we bottled it, sold it to different companies, and then we poured all of the whiskey back in. And so now I have a barrel. That, by the way, was amazing during COVID.
I'm sure.
Like the most popular guy in the neighborhood.
It's a lot of whiskey to drink during the pandemic. So I want you to visualize this. He bought a barrel of whiskey. He emptied it into individual bottles. He resold those bottles to all these entities that he created. He then poured them back in a reconstructed cask at his house. Yeah. Like this shit only happens in Silicon Valley with people like Martin.
The most important thing is I still have the entities. So if anybody wants to buy a barrel of whiskey, I'm your guy.
Just invite me to your next meeting. That's all I can.
We should have brought some whiskey into this session. He oversees a $1.25 billion infrastructure fund at Andreessen and is on more boards than I can count, over 20 boards, I believe. But some of the more prominent ones that you're probably familiar with would be DBT, Fivetran, Cursor, some really interesting technologies. And prior to becoming a venture capitalist, he founded a company called Nicira, and sold that company to VMware back in 2012 for $1.25 billion. And I think is widely recognized as one of the world's foremost thinkers when it comes to software-defined networking. So thank you guys both for joining us. Okay, so I've got some scripted questions, and then we're going to go off script a little bit to keep it interesting. And then hopefully if we have some time left, then we'll pass a microphone around, and if you have a question you'd like to ask either of these two, please do so. So the first question is for Martin. So we're in this hype cycle, and you heard Mike Driscoll just recently talk about the corollary to the dot-com boom in the late 90s. And I'd hate to ask for a show of hands who were in San Francisco in the late 90s, but it's a subset of the room, but it was a lot of fun. And all of a sudden now we're in this fourth massive technological wave with AI, but Martin's job is to predict the future and to see what's the next hype cycle. And so from where you sit, what do you think is underhyped as an investor or just as a technology in general?
Yeah, so I think tech likes to fight the last battle, and we're doing a lot of that. Like, I wasn't here today. I just showed up like half an hour ago. But I'm guessing I could kind of like guess what a lot of the buzzwords were. Like I bet you heard like MCP and agentic, and we probably talked about like support and all these enterprise use cases. But if you actually look at how this stuff is being used, it's actually quite a bit different. Like there's a new like user behavior emerging that we don't talk about. So actually, I wrote it down. I'm gonna actually quiz you. So.
No, I'm asking the question. No. When you're the dumbest guy on stage, you don't get quizzed.
Anybody can shout it out, because somebody here probably knows. So what do you think is the number? This is from a HBS study on the number one uses, if you actually break out intents, and I think it was from OpenAI, was like the model. I think it was GPT 3.5. So like, what is the number one use case, would you say, for something like ChatGPT?
Can I ask a friend?
Those are all great. Okay, therapy. So that's one. So the number one is therapy. That's great. It's actually therapy/companionship. Okay, number two use case. What's that? Spell check, not spell check. So it turns out it's organizing, then it's finding purpose, enhanced learning, and then the fifth one is coding for pros, right? And so we have all of these conferences, and we talk about MCP, and we talk about like how it helps the enterprise. We do all of these things, but like there's this massive revolution that is changing people's lives. And if you look at like the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it's like the top three things, right? It's like fulfillment and spirituality. Like that's really what's changing. And so I think a lot of the people in the big labs know this. I think that we're starting to understand it, but I think it's so early, and we're like have got like the last battle on our brains that like we're just starting to cope with it. And the internet was very, very similar. Like we kept thinking about it as like traditional desktop software until we realized it was opening up totally new stuff. And so I think like the most kind of, underreported, undervalued sector is this emerging new sector that we don't even really know the implications are at this point. Does that make sense?
So Srinivas, coming over to you, I'm sure you field this question routinely. There are a lot of software engineers in the room who are looking out at the next few years and thinking about the role that they're going to play in this new era of LLMs and AI models. Like, how do you see the role of the software engineer evolving over the next few years?
I mean, we have a very new interface to computing, and the way we are writing software is just changing very profoundly. I was talking with Martin earlier. I mean, ChatGPT grew crazy. Coding is one of the top use cases. I think he said Cursor is one of the fastest growing apps. And it's pretty clear, right? The way we are writing software is changing very profoundly. Cursor was maybe more interactive. We just recently launched Codex, and I see it internally too. The way people are interfacing with how to write software is just completely different from just a year ago. I think that's just incredibly exciting. I think we're still figuring out what to use the model for. What do you enjoy doing? What do you actually want the model to do? So I don't think that is quite clear. And as much as we all like to say that AI is going to write all the modern software, it probably will. But I think you're going to have a very personal relationship with the model. And I think you're going to find this interface where you're going to try to figure out what you enjoy doing and do that, and try to get the model to do everything else you don't want to do.
So then, Martin, if you're looking across your portfolio and you're counseling engineers, what advice are you giving? What skill sets would you encourage them to develop over the next 3 years?
Well, I'm definitely not in the camp that like software's over, right? I'm like in the other camp. I mean, in some way, one way that I like to think about it, like imagine if like there's this magic machine, and that magic machine, you can describe a car, and a car will pop out on the other side of the magic machine. But parts of the car is not going to be what you want, or it's not going to work, and it's kind of up to you to deal with. Like, so would you rather be a driver or a mechanic? And in those situations, you probably want to understand how it works, especially as the machine is starting to get better. And code is very similar right now. It's kind of interesting. If you actually look at productivity, and we know this because we do these analysis, the engineers that have better productivity with models tend to be more senior engineers. It's obvious to some, but not obvious to others. So why is that? It's just because they actually know what to ask, and they understand the implications of what gets produced. And it turns out in computer science, there's like fundamental trade-offs, right? And if you don't know about these fundamental trade-offs, you wouldn't even know how to evaluate or ask for the right thing. I mean, they're like the laws of physics. And so I actually think right now, a more senior engineer is more powerful than what the senior engineer was 5 years ago. But I think a lot of that reduces down to actually understanding like computer science fundamentals. And so, listen, I can't predict the future. I'm not going to try and predict the future. I think that formal languages like code, they arose out of natural languages for a reason. Remember, we spoke English first and then we came up with code, right? And the reason is specificity. So like going back to English to design these systems is almost would be like a reversion. Does that make it would be like reverting to like how it was before we came up with the formal languages to begin with? And so I think fundamentals really matter. I think decide what you really like. And I think, listen, maybe at some point in the future, we'll have a different type of interface or a different type of language. I think it'll still be formal, but we're not there yet. And like, if you're passionate about it, like be part of that journey. Because I've seen many of these journeys at this point, and like they always are a sigmoid, and they always become difficult. And it's going to be kind of a trek to get there. So I'm very, very much in the stance, and I get this question all the time. I mean, like, listen, my niece is calling me. It's like, should I be studying computer science, this and that? And the answer is absolutely yes. It is a meta language. Literally, if we're going to do AGI, like AGI is literally just going to write code and solve the other problems, right? Like this is like the thing. And I think we should all just continue to invest heavily in engineering and computer science and software.
Okay. So then coming back to what you're seeing at OpenAI right now and talking about scarcity and bottlenecks. And if you look at the different development attributes that you're overseeing in terms of the model architecture, the data pipelines, the inference infrastructure, if you had to pick one, and I know it's a difficult one, like where do you see the biggest risk in terms of bottlenecks slowing you down?
I think it's still fundamentally scientific algorithmic innovation. I think we are on a scaling trajectory, and I think it'll get us some far, but it's not clear that it will solve all the problems. So I think algorithmic and fundamental scientific innovation is probably the hardest thing. We clearly have data bottlenecks and compute bottlenecks, but those are, I think, more tractable.
Martina, how would you potentially answer that question?
So I'm not in OpenAI, so I'm going to pretend
Sure.
that.
So
No. I'm actually going to like listen. So what I'm saying could be wrong here, but I would say here would be my best guess. My best guess is if you ask the people closest to it, they'd be like, that pre-training stuff, that's a 10 out of 10 for like technical innovation. It's super, super, super general, and it's super, super useful, right? So you throw a bunch of compute at a problem, you get this model out, and that model you can use for like writing poetry. You can use it for code. You can use it for summarization. So that's a 10 out of 10. But we've kind of ran out of tokens, and so that's asymptotic, which we all know. OK, that's fine. But now we've got this RL stuff, and RL is great because with RL we can have a validator and we can throw compute at the problem. But I'm going to call that a 7 out of 10. And the reason it's a 7 out of 10 is because, well, you need to have a validator, and it actually doesn't generalize as much, it seems. And so you may have to like do different models for different things. And I suspect we're going to keep getting these sorts of things, but I think these sorts of, these sorts of innovations are going to have different curves. And I don't think there's another 10 out of 10 right now that is in the foreseeable future, right? And so, listen, the long arc of technology is like the universe is a complex place, and there's a lot of entropy, and we're trying to save ourselves from the dying of the sun, and like it's a lot of work. And I think that like we're kind of working way up at it, but we're kind of over a lip. And so I agree with you that very much we need more innovation in order to like get back to the same type of growth period that we've had in the last 3 to 4 years.
One way I would say.
By the way, is that right? I don't know. I was just.
Yeah, I think we were answering in two different perspectives. Let me unify the two, which is in the long term, you need more scientific algorithmic innovation. I think in the near horizon, the best thing you can do is actually ability to express hard tasks and evaluations for hard tasks.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
So let's shift to build versus buy. And as you're trying to rapidly innovate these AI infrastructure stacks, we had two of your engineers, Akshay and Poom, present today, and they were terrific.
They talked about our ClickHouse replacement? No, just kidding.
No, they did not talk about Rockset.
Yeah.
They talked about ClickHouse. It was wonderful.
They are Rockset engineers who are actually like using a lot of ClickHouse, so we love that.
Yeah. That was kind of a jestful joke. Anyway, maybe not. So if you think about the AI infrastructure and you think about the distributed system aspect of that, and we're building a distributed system. We've got a global footprint. Much fewer customers than you have. Like, what are you thinking about around like distribution, latency constraints, the international aspect of your user base?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about algorithmic and model innovation. There is tremendous scaling and maybe I would lack for a better word, I'd call it classic engineering challenges. The extra challenge for OpenAI is just the phenomenal rate at which our products are growing. It's pretty unprecedented. We had a very recent example called Image Gen, like, the new Image Gen model. We added 100 million users in a week. I've never seen anything like that, right? Like at our scale, it's just pretty crazy, and pretty much everything tripped apart. We ran out of like rate limits in our file systems, our databases, we didn't have enough GPUs, like you name it, right? And so I think just scaling at this pace is generally a hard problem, and we are working at it very systematically. Of course, we have users all over the world, and how do you get infrastructure in all the different places? So there's no like magic answer here, and those are challenges that we deal with. I thought you also talked about build versus buy. Is that a separate question, or
What was that?
Build versus buy?
Yeah.
The way we look at it, I mean, we use ClickHouse, we use other products too. I think the main thing for us is, are the products that we are using going to solve our unique needs? Because we are reaching a point at which there is only maybe 2 or 3 companies in the world that have larger scale than us. And so our needs are becoming really unique and bespoke, and so can partners solve that? I think that's one big dimension. The second dimension, probably more important, is that, is it strategically important for us to do it ourselves? Like, we would rather not build everything, right? We don't want to. We want to leverage other people, but like, and the third is opportunity cost. Like, if I do this, what am I not doing, and is this the most important thing for us to build? Yeah.
Martin, how do you think about it when you're talking to your portfolio companies? And I'll maybe even broaden the question to build versus buy, proprietary versus open source when it comes to an infrastructure stack.
Yeah, these are big questions. I mean, I will say like a great litmus test for whether the labs have reached AGI is whether they've stopped hiring and whether they've stopped buying. And as far as I can tell, they're hiring like crazy and they're buying like crazy. And so I think any founder that I work with that's kind of assuming AGI is going to come and save them, I'm like, just watch the people who are at the front lines. And so I think we're still very much in a staff up, get talent, buy technology. Like, I don't think that like AI is going to code an OLAP. I mean, these things are incredibly hard to get right. There's a very long tail. And by the way, you think like I'm quasi-joking, but I'm actually not. Like, I can't tell you how many founders that I work with were like, I'm going to reduce headcount. I'm going to Doge my own company because like AI is going to save me. I'm like, dude, like wake up, right? I mean, like this is like this whole thing. And so I'm very much in the belief that like if you're writing an OLAP and you're not like fucking Anchor Goyle and like have done it 3 times, you're an idiot. You should definitely buy pieces of software. You should definitely hire experts at what they're doing. Like a junior engineer in Cursor is not going to replace someone that knows what they're talking about. So I'm very much in the like we should not kind of assume that the trends are going to come quicker than they are. You asked a question about distributed systems. I'll say one thing, which is these are very different workloads than the workloads that we've used in the past. They just are. Like, the communication requirements are different. The interconnectivity is different. The storage requirements are different, et cetera. And so I love to see second-order effects of things, right? Like, the second-order effects of, like, whatever, building streets was, like, like the suburbs. And I'm an infrastructure investor, and we're seeing massive second-order effects of AI. And it's exactly because it tears all the way down the stack. Like, you don't change like basic kind of memory lookup requirements or something like that without changing the entire stack. And so I think there's huge opportunities for infrastructure all the way down. We are seeing companies that are very successful with it. A lot of the innovation is actually coming from OpenAI, but it's proliferating. So I would expect that we're going to see a lot more activity around. And again, I think these are the types of things that are very hard, unless you're at scale, to do yourself. And so, I would keep your eyes open for people that know what they're doing. I would definitely keep your eyes open for pieces of infrastructure that you should kind of buy rather than build yourself. And listen, AGI will save us one day, but not tomorrow.
I'll add something to the workloads are very different, right? Even within ChatGPT, there's just a wide range. If you're just asking for some emotional advice, you want an answer fast, but then you can also ask it to do deep research for 20 minutes and come back and solve a complex problem. Like, that's a very, very different workload. And I think that's a completely new paradigm, even as an average consumer, to think about, which is you're so used to just getting answers immediately. But this is opening up an entirely new world where, like, hey, just wait 10 minutes, I'll give you a much better answer. I don't think people are really used to that. And so how do you even think about infrastructure for that, right?
Yeah.
That's one example.
I'm going to shift to more of a personal question, Srinivas, if you don't mind. So you're kind of experiencing, a stage in the industry that's pretty unprecedented in terms of the strain on the entire ecosystem across the board. You're competing for arguably the best engineers in the world with a lot of companies, and it's a race, and we know that these windows close really quickly. And you're at now this extremely richly valued company. It just keeps growing and growing in optics, and I'm sure that comes with a lot of cultural challenges in managing your engineering team. Then you talk about these services that develop 100 million users in a week, which is just unprecedented, and you just like routinely see this again and again. And then you've got like the political and regulatory complexity. Like, which of those keeps you up at night, like consistently, if you could pick one? Or is it just a combination of things? And like when you start your day, because something I'm struggling with is I start the day and there's just like 20 things that are right in front of me that I need to address because they're urgent. Yeah. And they're customer issues, or an employee, has an issue I need to like tend to. And I'd be curious to know, like, how do you deal with it? Because I think you're experiencing it at a scale which most people have never seen.
You probably know this anytime you're running large organizations, the fires of the day are every day is different. So some of that is just that. I think one tough aspect about just hyperscaling, we have grown so much, is that it takes time for people to build relationships and form trust in a new setting, right? And that AI is not accelerating that, honestly, in any way. It just comes from people spending time with each other. And I think one of the really difficult challenges for us is like organizations grow very quickly because you have so much to do, but getting people to work really well together is not easy when you don't have prior relationships, and prior relationships form from working together on very hard problems. And so how do you create a culture where people can do really interesting work when everybody is new is not an easy problem. And I think we try to do our best to foster that, but I think that is a challenge.
Does the body ever just reject the organ in terms of you bring somebody in and they look great on paper, they interview incredibly well, you've worked with them in the past, like all these things line up and it just is dead on arrival? And you just scratch your head and say, like, what did I miss? Yeah. And what do you learn from those experiences?
Absolutely. I think there's this great saying, I think Peter Thiel had, right? Like every successful company is unique and all failed companies are similar. And so the culture at every company is different. And I think you have to really adapt yourself to what works in a different company. And some people do that well. Some people don't do that well. And that doesn't mean they're not great, that they're great in a different setting. So I think that's just like really inherently hard to assess. We do our best, but we've had our share of hiring mistakes. Yeah.
Aaron, I actually want to get to the earlier question. I could just add a little bit of color, which I think is a great question, which is like, we're in a super cycle, it's crazy, it's chaotic, and there's a lot going on in a lot of places. Like, what is new, what is not new? And listen, I would say not everybody is meant to be in Vienna during the Renaissance. It's just not for everybody. Like, it's chaotic, people freak out, and I've been in every super cycle. Well, since the late 90s, I've been in every super cycle here in the Bay, and it's always the same. Like, you've got people that are like, oh, technology is going to kill us. Oh, it's messing with politics. Oh, it's doing this. And you've got, the jobs are shifting. And then, oh, this is going to save us. And like, utopia's, 5 years ahead. And like, this wave is faster and furious and more aggressive, but it's still the same. Maybe it's 10 times bigger, but like a lot of that stuff is there and it's still technology. And like the disruption may be bigger, it may be faster, it may be more furious, but like we have so many tools in tech to deal with this type of stuff, man. We're like super, super experts at dealing with mass disruptions, at dealing with changes, at dealing with shifts. Like we're very, very good at that. And so I think we're in one of these, and it's not for everybody, but like I don't think it's like 2 standard deviations out of normal. I will say, I do think that the political environment is very different. And so if you were to make a comparison between the two, I think that one is more, for me, kind of more of an unknown for macroeconomics or how I invest or like how companies deal with regulatory stuff, because it's not like the others in that sort of a way. So between the two, that I would say that one is less normal than than the fact that we're in a technical super cycle.
So anecdotally, Martina and I are the same age, and we presented at a conference a few weeks ago. We were asked to do a fireside chat, the two of us, and they had our profile pics up, and neither of us had gray hair in these pictures. And so I was
Pre-COVID
like,
pictures.
we have like really old profile pics, or the last couple years have been like really stressful because that's just not what we look like. I had to look, I'm like, when would this picture
Who is that? I know, we're like,
all right, so last question I'm gonna ask, and then if people in the audience have a question, and then we'll call it and head upstairs. So we just finished a financing round, and so yeah, I've been doing this now for the last 4 or 5 years, and from what I've observed, the venture experience as an investor has changed dramatically over the past couple years, in the sense that it's gotten significantly more competitive. But like you've been able to continue on this trajectory where you just get these high quality looks, or somehow you identify a company, if it's Cursor or something else, before others do. And so I know you don't want to tell us all your trade secrets, but what is it that differentiates you? And I know it's a really tricky question because it's a very personal question.
Yeah.
But like when you think about your craft, because you're competing with extremely accomplished, bright people that have a track record of success, and then all of a sudden they don't. And so what do you do to just keep this edge ahead of your competition as an investor?
So I'll tell you exactly how we invest. This is our secret. So, which is, and you can only do it if you have fund sizes and the same size as ours, and you're the size of us, right? So it only works for certain firms. But kind of the conclusion we've come to is like we can't predict the future. You just can't. And we've also come to the conclusion that founders are smarter than VCs. And so we've got this very simple algorithm, and I'll tell you why the algorithm is important. The very simple algorithm is, if there's 3 or 4 founders that are interested in a space, it's a real space. Like if you're a good founder and you're spending your time there and like you're risking your family's future and all your opportunity costs, like who am I to second guess that? So we never second guess markets, even if it sounds crazy. Like I wouldn't have guessed Snap, for example, and it was very successful, right? So the first thing we do is we follow the founders. If there's enough founders in a space, we're like, that's a real space. And then one area that we think we can add value is to determine, of the companies in that space, which one's the best. It's a very, very different question than whether it's a good investment. Don't care if it's a good investment. All I want to know is it's the best. And the good thing about actually having an algorithm is you can scale the algorithm, right? I can tell other people you have kind of a criterion, you kind of get rid of the principal agent problem. Like there's a way to do this that actually scales. And I mean, there's 2 hard things about venture. One of them is the emotion issue. It's very tough to get outside of your own head, and it's super, super tough. And the other one is the principal agent issues. Everybody kind of wants to do their own deals. And this kind of allows you to kind of split up the work, have a process, and have like really, really concrete ways of thinking about it. And that's basically our strategy. And so listen, I've got a team that's far better than I am. It's literally the pleasure of my career to work with my team. Seriously, my favorite part of my job. Fantastic team. This is what we do. Literally, that's the entire secret. So if you guys were wondering like what it was, it's that. And I think if you are level-headed and prosecute that, you'll have an index of the best companies in the industry. And then listen, we're just also very, very lucky to be in Silicon Valley at this time. And like the time won't last. I mean, like it's going to be 30, 40, 50 years, and then things change. And so we're all super lucky to be here. And I feel like I'm a bit of a product of that.
Yeah.
Can I say one thing?
Absolutely.
You asked about what keeps me up, and I've been in Silicon Valley also now almost 30 years. I may not look like that, but I'm much older than I look. And I was here during the internet boom as well. This is the craziest time I've ever experienced in my life, and it's just such a privilege to be here. The team I have is obviously fantastic. It's a huge privilege to work with them, but also the impact I see it having on pretty much every sector of society, like in healthcare, in education, like in consumer land, and like I've never experienced anything like this. And so I'm just like so excited to be alive right now, and I don't think this will ever come back in my life, so just I'm enjoying it.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
Well said. You need to share some of your secrets on how you look so young.
I was going to say, man.
At the happy hour. You're not leaving until you tell me something. Okay, are there any questions in the audience? Yeah.
I have a question. Something that you said, Martin, like just spurred something in my mind, so I wrote it down.
Yeah.
You mentioned that senior software engineers are leveraging LLMs with greater proficiency in producing higher quality results.
Yeah.
And I've started to notice that, like with other industries, for example, like an accountant that has 10 years of experience is much better than somebody coming out of college.
Yeah.
How do you think that's going to impact industries in the long term if like more senior people can do things much more effectively and with less resources, and so those like newer people aren't having an opportunity to enter the industry in general?
I think this is a very important question that I've actually thought a fair bit about. I mean, I think there's a few things that we just should take as given. I mean, historically, every time that we've come up with a technology where productivity increases, you actually have more things to do, and I think that will be the case here. It's happened every single time historically. And so, you know, there's going to be a lot of more things to do. I think the question is how, you know, just because you raise the more senior people more, you still have other work to do. So the question is how do you change the industry to bring up the lower levels, right? And it could be one of two things. Nothing could change, the scalar quality goes up, but I actually think there's a disparity going on. So I sometimes wonder if things move more like what happened to like more mature industries like legal, like finance, where you have a bit more of like almost like a junior partnership model. Like VC is very different than software engineering. I mean, you literally have like they come in, they work for years to learn the job. It's a long tail job. You know, you connect them with people. Like it's much more of like an apprentice model. And so sometimes I wonder if like we were going to move a bit more to that, because you know that you need to kind of grow workers. Like that's definitely a given. So you know you're going to need jobs, but it may be the case that the disparity comes to the point that it is like a legal profession where like it's the long tail of understanding that you have. But then every time I say that, I'm like, wait, but that's how it is right now anyways. And so I think I keep coming back to the fact that like, I think the scalar quality changes. Like you go from this much productivity to this much productivity. I don't think there's going to be a shift between the more senior and the more junior in software engineering at least relative to what it is. But I think it's a very, very important question. I don't take the question lightly. Yeah.
I can add another perspective, which is, I don't know if it is necessarily, and maybe different from what you're saying, I don't know if it is necessarily senior versus junior. It is who's embracing the technology, the better, the faster.
That's a great point.
And I see this, like we have new grads who are just incredible. And I'm like, holy cow, I want 10 more of them, right? And so I think it's more the mindset and the ability to adapt to this. So I think that will change. Yeah.
Just like how they think about prompting too, and like
Yeah.
maybe growing up with it is going to allow them.
Yeah, and I think I would say the experienced people have a slight disadvantage because they're used to their ways. And the younger people are like, no, they're fearless. They're just going to be more open-minded.
Any other questions in the room? No? All right, well, why don't we bring it to a close? I want to thank both Martine and Srinivas for joining us. They simply did this as a courtesy to an ask. That's it. And I could imagine both are extremely busy. So to come here at the end of the day and spend this time with us, we are all grateful. So thank you both.
Happy to do it.
Thank
Thanks for
you.
the invite. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Good.